Hey everybody, this is Roberto Blake of RobertoBlake.com helping you create something awesome today. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about memory cards for your DSLR cameras. I'm actually using two different brands of memory cards for the most part. I'm using Lexar and Transcend, although I'm going to be doing more with Lexar and buying more of those cards from now on just because of the speed. But I'm going to talk to you about how you buy memory cards and what you need to be looking for overall. So in general, it's important to know what kind of memory cards your camera is capable of taking. I shoot with crop sensor DSLR cameras from Nikon, so those take SD memory cards. Most of your DSLR cameras today are taking SD memory cards. They'll take the high capacity ones. Some of them will take up to 64 gigabytes, 128. I think that 128 is too big a card to use in most cases personally, because you have to understand that when you're dumping cards or when you're searching through cards or when you're doing any of that stuff, the bigger a card or a hard drive is, the longer it takes to get through the entire thing and find what something needs. So I try to keep things in that 32 to 64 range. If you're on a budget, maybe you start with some 16 gigabyte memory cards. If you are the type of person who shoots JPEG, 16 gigabytes is plenty. I shoot camera raw because I need all of that data because I'm going to edit everything myself. I want to edit the raw files, so I use 32 gigabyte cards. Eventually, because I'm doing more with video as well, I might go to the 64 gigabyte cards, but I found that like the sweet spot for me, both for price, for speed, I just find that 32 is really getting it done for me, and that's why I would recommend, if you're doing DSLR video and photography like me, that you go with 32, possibly you go with 64. Now, something that gets complicated for a lot of people is there's a number on these cards that they may not understand, and there's some lettering here too. So on this card, and hopefully I've got the close-up here in B-roll for you, you'll notice there's some things. There's SD and it says HC, that's high capacity. There's also the number 10 on there, and there's also the 1600X. 1600X is just a marketing thing that they're doing to kind of indicate the speed. Roughly what that means, usually means that it's 90 megabytes per second max on the transfer speed, or what it's guaranteeing there. So it's a fast card. Big number that you need to worry about is the number 10 on there. Number 10 on there tells you that it's a class 10 card. You always want to get a class 10 card whenever you get any memory cards that are SD, micro SD, whatever it is, you want to get that. Now, this is also a USH card. It's a USH1. I forget what that acronym stands for, but it doesn't matter. You want to get USH1 or USH2 if you can. Those are just going to be the better overall memory cards, and they're going to be a lot faster for you. So that's what I'm going to recommend. In terms of brands, like I said, I'm using Lexar and Transcend. They both have been doing a great job for me. They both have recovery software. Thank God I have not had to use that recovery software ever, but those are the two brands that I'm going to recommend that have been reliable. Obviously, SanDisk is another big brand that's up there. You have to remember, Transcend, though, makes the kits for the MacBook Pro upgrades as far as the SSD drives. So if you've never heard of Transcend, they still are a very viable brand. I think they're bigger overseas than they are here in the States. But I go with Lexar and I go with Transcend for my memory cards. I've used the other brands. I believe my brother is using PNY and he's never had any problems with that. I think my sister is using a SanDisk card and she hasn't had any problems so far. I've used them in the past. The cards that have been the most reliable for me are Transcend and Lexar, so that's why I use them. And that's why those are my recommendations. I'm going to have those in the description below as links so that you can pick those up if you want to. They're also super affordable. I found out the price difference between Transcend and Lexar isn't that bad. On average, a Lexar card in the Pro series that I'm using the Lexar Professional series, is maybe $1 to $3 more than a Transcend card. That's not bad, and I just find that the Lexar speeds are a little better. So I definitely like that. And also photographers that I trust are using them. Scott Kelby, Terry White, Jared Polin, a lot of those guys are using the Lexar cards, and that's why I think that if you're going to go long term and you want to invest in memory cards, those guys are shooting things like concerts, the Olympic Games, and events for Adobe. If they're relying on these cards to do that, I would say that that's probably a reliable endorsement for the fact that these cards work. So that's just my stance on that. In terms of how many memory cards you should get, I recommend that initially you invest in maybe 3 or 4 memory cards to start with. That way you have more than enough and you can stay organized and you can swap stuff out. And I would say that you also consider buying a new memory card at least once or twice a month going forward for your first year or two. Now that I'm doing more content, I just buy memory cards on a whim as a batch, and that's working out okay for me. I have a pile of them. I'm going to be buying some more, and I'm going to buy them in batches of probably 4. And the reason is because I'm using the Lexar Workflow Hub. I can dump 4 memory cards at a time. So I'm probably going to buy my memory cards in batches of probably 2 packs. And so I'll probably buy 2 packs and get 4 cards at a time of the 32 gigabyte cards. That's how I'm going to be doing it going forward. I would say a good healthy amount of overall cards is maybe somewhere between 8 and 16 cards. You're probably good to go. I'm probably going to do a little more because of the video stuff. And so in my mind, what I would feel really comfortable with is if I had 30 memory cards. And the reason I say that is because it means that I could then shoot a new memory card every day for a month if I had to and fill it up. And so that's what I would be looking to do, as I'm producing a lot of content and video takes up so much more than photography. That's the direction I would go. But anyway, those are my thoughts on how you go about buying memory cards for your DSLR camera. Those are my thoughts on it. If you are using higher end cameras, you might have 2 SD card slots. So you might need to double up on that based on what I'm saying here, because you could always go ahead and have the memory cards copy over for redundancy, so that you always have a backup. So whatever amount that I'm applying here, if you're buying a higher end camera, even a Nikon D7200 takes 2 card slots, then I would say that whatever numbers I'm throwing out, you get twice as many cards. That might be my recommendation for you there. If you're doing that kind of work, maybe go with the 64 gig cards as well. I'm just not there where I feel comfortable to use the 64 gig cards versus the 32, and honestly they are pricier when you get into the higher end cards. 32 gigs allows me to get some very quality cards at a very nice sweet spot in terms of price, not spending more than 20-25 bucks tops per card. So that's why I'm looking at it that way. Anyway, if you have questions, leave those in the comment section below. Links are in the description for you. Like this video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out the other awesome content on the channel. As always, you guys, thanks so much for watching, and don't forget, create something awesome today.